Hi everybody, welcome to the Pick 6 Super Bowl special, Super Bowl 45 in beautiful Dallas Stadium between the Green Bay Packers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm Adam Brody.
I'm Simrath. I'm back for another round this week. I'm sure you all know who I am. I forgot to wear my Steelers jersey this week, so shame on me.
I'm Brian Batko, aka James Farrier for the day. Haven't been on Pick 6 in a while, but had to make a return for this gigantic game featuring my Steelers.
And Simrath is apparently the only person trying to appear unbiased in their predictions for this game. Anyway, starting off with what the Pittsburgh Steelers need to do to win this game. What I think the Pittsburgh Steelers need to do to win this game is get early pressure on Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is extremely efficient, especially when playing on indoor turf, completing over 66% of his passes in such a situation. He has a history of concussions. He took a real hard hit from Julius Peppers 2 weeks ago. Supposedly no concussion from that hit from his new helmet. We'll see if that's true or not. They're probably trying to hide something like that for the Super Bowl. But if James Harrison, Lamar Woodley, Dick LeBeau's defense can get early pressure on Aaron Rodgers, it'll rattle him enough, make some of the balls on deep throws a little bit off, hurry him in the pocket, don't give him enough time to get set. That should give the Steelers enough chance to defend the potent Green Bay Packers offense, and the Steelers should be able to win the game if they can do that early.
Well, I think there's no doubt the Steelers have to be able to run the ball. I think we might get a little tempted to spread the ball out, throw it too much after last year's shootout. We know the Packers are going to try to spread the ball. I think the key, though, is you have to run the ball like last week against the Jets. You have to limit the number of Green Bay possessions. That's not an insult to the defense, just how you play the Green Bay Packers. You have to be able to control the clock. I think when you got to see last week with Rashad Mendenhall, I think that has to hold true. The Steelers, if they try to spread the field, do not have favorable matchups. The Green Bay secondary is extremely deep. Last week, the Steelers didn't have great success against the deep Jets secondary. Throwing the ball, they have to be able to run the ball. That's not a knock on anybody. Doug Legroski has to be able to hold his own somewhat against B.J. Raji. They have to be able to run to the outside because that's where the Packers have been most vulnerable this year. Packers' run defense has not been great this year. They can run the ball. They just got to be committed to it and hold the ball as long as they can.
Yeah, I agree with you, Simrath. They got to try to keep the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands as much as possible. But I think even more important for the Steelers on Sunday, they have to keep Big Ben upright. Ben Roethlisberger is their franchise quarterback. He's the guy that is going to carry them to victory in this Super Bowl, going up against the high-flying Packers offense. The offensive line has struggled at times this year for the Steelers, allowing the defense to get pressure and sack Ben Roethlisberger. He's great at getting out of spots like that, but he's not going to be able to do it every time, especially against this playmaking Packers defense with Clay Matthews, A.J. Hawk, and then, of course, that defensive line with B.J. Raji, Cullen Jenkins. So the offensive line is going to need to keep Ben Roethlisberger standing upright and not on the turf, because we saw when they played the Ravens, Terrell Suggs just had a field day. This is a patchwork offensive line. It has been all year. If they can just gut it out one more game and keep their quarterback with no dirt on him, they'll be fine.
All right, moving over to the other side of the ball, Packers. What I think the Packers need to do to win this game is attack the Pittsburgh secondary on the outside, attack the sidelines. Pittsburgh secondary is a bit of an enigma. You have Troy Polamalu, defensive MVP of the year, one of the best players in his position to ever play the game, and you have Ryan Clark, a solid safety. But on the outside, there's a little bit of question at cornerback for the Steelers. Ike Taylor, inconsistent. Brian McFadden and William Gay are average cornerbacks on a good day. If the Green Bay Packers want to win the game, they know they're not going to be able to run, so they have to attack short routes, outside routes, along the sideline. Keep Troy Polamalu and Ryan Clark out of the secondary. Don't try anything over the middle. James Harrison, Lamar Woodley are monsters. They'll destroy anybody trying to go over the middle. But the cornerbacks for the Steelers are really the weak spot, and Aaron Rodgers is such an efficient passer. If they just target the sidelines on short routes, out routes, even an occasional deep ball where Troy Polamalu can't get there, the Packers will be able to win the game if they can do that.
Well, I think when you look at the Green Bay Packers, it's about schemes. Everybody loves to talk about Dick LeBeau, his zone blitzes, but the Packers offensively, they have to be able to attack that, and they have to be able to confuse the Pittsburgh Steelers. Offensively, they love to spread the ball. They love to do 5 receivers. They do it as much as any team in the league. They love to do their full house, which is 3 backs. I don't know if they're going to do that, but they love to put 3 receivers on one side and they actually love going over the middle of the field. That's where they had a lot of success last time when we played them last year. So I do think the Steelers are going to try to clog that. So that's where his point comes in. They have to be able to throw on the sides. They have to take shots down the field against those shaky corners. Greg Jennings versus Ike Taylor is going to be absolutely critical. And when the Green Bay Packers on defense, it's all about, again, confusing Ben Roethlisberger. They love to run their crazy formations. That's what Don Capers has done all year. They have a psycho formation with one defensive lineman. They love to run that. The Steelers, surprisingly, have not been good against all these nickel and dime defenses with many defensive backs. They had problems against it with the Jets. Rashad Mendenhall's only averaged 3 yards a carry they were talking about earlier. One playing against five or more defensive backs on a field. They have to be able to do that. They have to be able to confuse Ben Roethlisberger. And also they have to be able to take away the deep throws. That's what killed them last time. Those breakdowns in coverage on the sidelines. If they can do that, then they're going to put the Steelers in bad situations where the Steelers, if they lose another tackle, they don't have a tackle. They're going to have to put Trey Essex in. They're going to have to put someone in. They don't have any more offensive linemen. It's not like they have good offensive linemen. They just don't have any offensive linemen. So the Packers just have to confuse the Steelers.
Yeah, my key to the game for the Packers is pretty much in contrast to my key to the game for the Steelers. I said the Steelers need to protect Ben Roethlisberger. The Packers need to get to Ben Roethlisberger, and when they get to him, they need to bring him down. We've seen plenty of teams get to Ben Roethlisberger back in the pocket, but then somehow, some way, he breaks a tackle, eludes the defender, and then fires a bomb down the field or to Hines Ward coming back to the ball. The Green Bay Packers really have to limit Big Ben making plays like that because that's what he does. That's what he's so good at. Even when you think you have him and you have him wrapped up, he somehow escapes. B.J. Raji, the Packers defensive lineman, he's a pretty big guy. You'd think he'd be able to bring Roethlisberger down when he gets to him. But we've seen Ben Roethlisberger shake bigger guys than Raji. So that's going to be the key for the Packers. You need to limit opportunities for Big Ben to make plays out of nothing because it only takes 1 or 2 big plays in a game like this to just really swing the momentum.
Well, I think Brian may have just offended B.J. Raji because I don't think he thinks there's anybody in the league bigger than him. We'll have to see about that. Moving on to who we think the MVP for this game is. I like Troy Polamalu to be the MVP in this game. The last time the Steelers were in the Super Bowl, it was a huge defensive play, a 100-yard touchdown return by James Harrison, and Polamalu was somewhat quiet in that game. And similarly, in these playoffs, Polamalu has been somewhat quiet. There hasn't been a huge splash play towards the end of the game that he's made to save the Steelers. And I think he's been saving it for this Super Bowl. I think it's going to come down towards the end of the game. Aaron Rodgers is driving down the field to either win or tie, and Polamalu is going to make an interception or force a fumble or have a huge sack, something like that will earn him the MVP of Super Bowl 45.
Well, I think Aaron Rodgers might very well take the MVP here. When you look at the Steelers, they always say to attack this defense, you have to be able to spread the ball out, throw the ball, 4 and 5 receivers. That's what the Patriots did when they came to Pittsburgh earlier this year. They spread the ball out, had huge success, ran up and down the field. This is just not a good matchup for the Steelers. Last year, they had problems against Aaron Rodgers in that spread offense. Aaron Rodgers, if you give too many possessions to him, I'm telling you, he's going to find holes in the secondary. The Steelers have bad matchups against the Packers' 3rd, 4th, and 5th receivers. They're going to have to put the likes of Anthony Madison out there. It's going to be harder on Troy Polamalu to roam everywhere when they spread the field. I just think Aaron Rodgers could have a very big day against the Steelers secondary.
Yeah, I don't want to make a concrete selection for MVP of this game yet, just to not give away my prediction. But I think the biggest player for the Packers, if they win, and who might be MVP, is Charles Woodson, a guy that's really getting up there in age, but he won Defensive Player of the Year last season. He hasn't made as many plays this year, but he's definitely still capable. I could see him easily coming up with 1 or 2 interceptions, maybe taking one back to the house. He's just everywhere on defense sometimes, and he really is a guy that can just make a big play and turn the game around. On the Steelers side of the ball, I think if anybody is going to be the most valuable player in this game, it could be running back Rashad Mendenhall. He really had a breakout game last week. He's been pretty good all season, but there was a few games there where he wasn't really getting anything going on the ground. If he runs as hard as he did against the Jets in the AFC Championship game, he should be able to have a really, really nice day against that Packers defense that's somewhat vulnerable to the run, like Simrath said. So I think Rashad Mendenhall could be a key player for Pittsburgh on Sunday.
Well, moving on to who we think is actually going to win the Super Bowl, I personally am picking the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I'll tell you why. comparing the two teams on the field is very difficult to do. It's very difficult to predict who will do better against the other team in terms of Green Bay's 4 wide receiver, 5 wide receiver offense against Pittsburgh's defense. It's very hard to predict how well the offensive line, without knowing Pouncey or Legursky playing center, it's very difficult to predict how well the Steelers' offensive line will protect Ben Roethlisberger. So what I think this game is actually going to come down to is almost the intangibles. Pittsburgh's been here before. There are a lot of veterans on this team that have been to 2 Super Bowls. They've had all the hype, the circus surrounding the Super Bowl. They're not going to be. There will be nerves. Don't get me wrong, but they won't be as nervous on the field as their Packers will be, especially to start the game. I like the Steelers to be a little bit calmer at the beginning of the game, kind of jump out to a quick start. I see the Steelers getting ahead by a touchdown, maybe even 10 points, maybe 14 points early, and that could really sort of rattle the Packers because they haven't seen the Super Bowl before. They haven't really experienced it. If you remember Ben Roethlisberger in his first Super Bowl, he was horrible, something like 9 of 21, 2 interceptions, a terrible passer rating, even though he did manage to win. I think Aaron Rodgers, for as good as he is, on the world's biggest stage, I think he's going to get a little bit of nerves and might cause some of his passes to go errant in the beginning of the game. For that reason, since it's really such a close game to predict, Packers favored by 2.5. It could really come down to the intangibles. I like Tomlin. He's been here before. He's coached the Super Bowl. He knows what to do. Roethlisberger, all those players, they've been here, and their experience should carry them through this.
Well, I just don't have a very good feeling about this game. I think people have to realize the Green Bay Packers just want the 1 seed in the NFC, the 2 seed in the NFC, and the 3 seed in the NFC, and they did so rather convincingly. This is a very, very, very good team, and Steelers just do not match up that well. Like I said, the Packers love to throw the ball. That's where the Steelers are the weakest. And people forget about how good Green Bay's defense is. They played absolutely amazing. They're every bit as good as our defense here. It's just they complement it with such a good offense. The Steelers are going to be at a crossroads. They're going to try to limit the possessions, but they're going to try to limit the possessions. But Aaron Rodgers can make the most out of limited possessions. There's going to be a lot of pressure on the Steelers' offense to keep up. I just don't know if they're going to be able to do it. I will say this though: when the Packers get leads, they struggle holding on to them. The Steelers know how to come back. They've come back this postseason. They could have a shot there, but I think overall the Packers just are one step above.
Simrath, always the Debbie Downer on this show, always the devil's advocate picking against the Steelers. I think it's going to be a really, really close game. These two teams on paper it's just so tight. I really had a hard time picking a winner. I think it's going to be it's going to be not really too low scoring, but also not quite a shootout. I think Rashard Mendenhall is going to have a very good day. He ran so hard against the Jets, and he really he proved himself to me. He had a couple off games. I think Ben Roethlisberger is going to take care of the football. Aaron Rodgers is going to be tough to keep in check. This might be the toughest assignment the Steelers' defense has faced this year, aside from maybe Tom Brady and the Patriots, and we saw how that went. But overall, I think this one's going to come down to the wire. But I think Rashard Mendenhall is just going to be a little too much for the Packers' defense. And I think the Steelers' defense is going to step up and get a big stop when they need to. I'll say Steelers 27, Packers 24.
One last point I'd like to make is that if this game does indeed come down to the wire, like Brian's predicting, like Simrath is predicting, and like I'm predicting myself, Ben Roethlisberger is one of the most clutch quarterbacks in the NFL recently. A ridiculous number of game-winning drives in the fourth quarter and overtime, whereas Aaron Rodgers has only had a few over the last couple seasons. That really could be the edge if one team or the other needs to drive down the field and score in the waning moments of Super Bowl 45. For myself, for Simrath, for Brian, this has been Pick 6 Super Bowl Special. I hope you enjoyed it, and be sure to watch next season when we come back bigger and better.